everyone, this is Javelin from English Tutor Hub and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a very important lesson all about the passive voice. So in today's lesson you will learn the form of the active voice because we are going to compare the active voice to the passive voice because it's very important that we do a quick revision on the active voice. Then we will look at the form of the passive voice and I will then explain why we use the passive voice, and we will also look at the passive voice and irregular verbs, and in fact throughout the lesson we will look at the meaning and use of the verb allow on the active and passive voices. So we are going to use the verb allow as an example. We are going to compare the active with the passive, and there are some exercises I prepared on a separate video, so make sure you watch the whole lesson and try to test your understanding on a separate video I prepared for your practice exercises. Alright? So a very quick revision of the active voice form. If you understand this will really help you understand the passive. So as I said, we are going to use the verb allow as an example during this lesson. So the pronunciation is allow, allow. And here is the present simple. It's regular, it's a regular verb. I allow, you allow, he, she, it allows with an S. We allow, you allow, and they allow. So very simple. Past simple is allowed, allowed. And the past participle is also allowed. So when a verb is regular, often the past simple and past participle is the same. But that is not the case with irregular verbs. Often with irregular verbs or some irregular verbs, the past simple and past participle are different, and I'll discuss that later in this video. So some quick examples. So the meaning of allow. First of all, let's look at the meaning of this. Let's look at the meaning of this verb. It means to give permission to someone to do something, all right? To authorize someone to do something, and a common structure is subject, followed by allow, followed by the object, and followed by the infinitive verb. Example, the librarian allows me to bring the books home. So this is the present simple, present. This means that the librarian gives me permission to bring the books home. The librarian authorized me to bring the books home. So this is the verb. The object, it's the object pronoun, and we have here the infinitive verb, to bring. Another example, the principal does not allow students to use cell phone in school. Now guys, here's the important here. This is very important. In the active voice, the verb allow has a subject. Alright, the verb allow has a subject. Here in the highlighted word, librarian, the principal. So we have the subject here, and this is the characteristic. We have the subject, guys, and this is the characteristic of the active voice. So we have a verb. We have a verb, a main verb, and a verb, has a subject. So therefore, in this example, when we use the active voice, we know who is giving permission. So, who is, in sentence 1, who is allowing me to bring the books home? Well, it's the librarian. Who does not allow us to use cell phone in school? It's the principal. So, with the active voice, we get more information. Alright, again guys, I'll repeat. With the active voice, we get more information. Therefore, we know who is giving permission. Alright, and as we'll see later in this lesson very soon, you'll see that it's not the case with a passive voice. Alright? This subject here, when we look at the passive voice, this subject, the subject here disappears. Alright? We no longer have the information, which is the subject, when we use the passive voice. Okay? Let's look at some examples of the active in the past. And again, this will help you understand the passive. So it's the same form. Subject plus allow, but allow here will now be in the past tense, followed by the object and the infinitive. For example, the security guard allowed them to enter the bank. So this is the past simple, alright? Luke's father allowed him to drive his car. And again, Luke, we have the subject. We know who gave permission to them to enter the bank. It's the security guard. We know who gave permission to Luke to drive a car. It's his father. And as we'll see in the passive, we no longer have this information. Okay? So now let's look at the passive voice. Okay? So the form is, we have the verb be followed by past participle. Not the past simple, but a past participle. So we have the verb be, and if we are in the present tense of the passive, the verb be will be in the present, followed by the past participle. You can see that here. Present, I am. So in the present tense of the passive voice, we have the verb be. the present tense. So we have the verb be in the present tense. So everything in blue. Everything in blue is the verb be in the present. I am, you are, he is, she is, it is, we are, you are, and they are. So that is simply the verb be in the present. Verb be in the present tense. And the past participle doesn't change for all of them. It is allowed. All right? So I am allowed. You are allowed. He, she, it is allowed. We are allowed. You are allowed. And they are allowed. And the past tense or the past participle of the passive voice, the only thing that changes is the tense of the verb be. So the verb be is now in the past tense. I was, you were, he was, she was, it was, we were, you were, and they were. All right? And always with the past participle, which the past participle does not change. All right? So now let's look at the examples and the meaning. So we're going to convert the active voice into the passive voice. So here is the sentence that we've already seen in the active voice. The librarian allows me to bring the books home. Remember, we have the information here, all right? We have the information here. We know who allows me to bring the books home because we have the subject in a highlighted word, which is the librarian. And this is the subject. And this subject is now going to disappear. And this is in the passive. I am allowed to bring the books home. So notice I am. This is the present tense of the verb be. Because in the active, it is allows, which is in the present. And this I am, which is a verb be, followed by the past participle. Alright, so I am allowed to bring the books home. But why? Why the I? Well, we take the object pronoun, or the object here is me, and we convert this object pronoun me, we convert the object into a subject. So the subject pronoun is I. So we have me here, and that becomes I. Okay? and the librarian disappears. Alright? So, we no longer, we do not know really who is giving me permission to bring the books home. And that's because it's not really important. It's not really an important piece of information. Important thing in the sentence is that I have permission. All right? That is in the passive. So that's what this means. I am allowed, and this is a past participle. This is not a past simple form. All right? It is the same as the past simple, but remember that is only because it is a regular verb. Allow is a regular verb. So it's just a coincidence, but you understand that this is a past participle. All right? I am allowed to bring the books home. So, why do we use the passive voice? Well, in fact, I've already answered that question. Let me explain that again. So, in the active form, the librarian allows me to bring the books home. So, it's giving us lots of information, but the subject of allow is not very important to the message of the sentence. Do we really need to know who gave me permission to bring the books home? Surely, the most important thing that we need to understand is that I have permission to bring the books home. So, we have permission to bring the books home is the important message here. Or that is why it is better to use the passive voice to this particular verb. So when we're talking about permission and allowing, this is more common. I am allowed to bring the books home. So, in conclusion, with the passive, it's not really important who gives the permission. And we don't even mention it. Alright? Again, with the passive, it's not really important who gives the permission, and we don't even mention it. Okay? Now, let's look at some more examples. Let's continue with the present. So, remember this example. The principal does not allow students to use cell phone in school. So, here we have allow in the present simple. This is a negative, does not allow students to use cell phone in school. So in the passive, this becomes we are not allowed to use cell phone in school. We no longer have the same information. We no longer have the same information. This is the subject, and the subject now disappear in the passive voice. And we take the object. We take the object of allow, which is the students, and we take this and make a subject of the verb be. So we have now we, which is the first person plural subject of the verb be. This is the present. This is the present. And this is also the present tense. All right? This is the present tense. So this is the verb be is also in the present tense. And we say we are not allowed to use cell phone in school. It's a negative. It's a negative, and again, this is a past participle. Alright? This is a past participle, allowed. This is not a past simple, but a past participle. We are not allowed to use cell phone in school. Alright? And take note that it's no mention of the principal. We don't know it. It's not important. Alright? Now, let's look at the past. So, in the active, the security guard allowed them to enter the bank. So, this is the past tense because this is a past simple, ed. So, this is a past simple, and in the passive, this becomes they were allowed to enter the bank. So, them is the third person plural object. So, this becomes a third person plural subject, they. This is a past tense, okay? This is a past tense. So the verb be is also a past tense. They were. All right? We don't say here they are because they are is the present. They were is the past tense of the verb be. And again, this is a past participle. This is a past simple. But this is a past participle. This is a past participle in the passive. They are the same. It's only the same. Yes, again guys, they are the same. But it's only the same because it's a regular verb. Allow is a regular verb. But take note, this is the past simple, and in the passive, this is a past participle. Alright? And another example, Luke's father allowed him to drive his car. So we have the past tense, the past simple tense, and in the passive, this becomes Luke was allowed to drive the car. So him is the object of allowed, and it is the third person singular masculine. And him is referring to Luke. So we can actually use Luke's name here. we can say Luke was allowed, or we can say he was allowed if we want. But if we know his name, then we use the name. So Luke was allowed to drive the car. It's the past tense here. It's the past tense here, so we use the past of the verb be in the passive. We use the past of the verb be, and again, we use the past participle. This is the past simple, but this is the past participle because that is the form of the passive voice. Verb be followed by the past participle. Alright? So we have used allowed. We have used allowed because it is a regular verb. It's easy. It's an easy verb. It's regular and it's easy because the past participle is the same as the past simple. But now let's look at some irregular verbs. So be careful with the passive and irregular verbs because often the past participle is not the same as the past simple. Let me give you an example. So we have a different verb here. Someone wrote my reports yesterday. So wrote is the past simple form of the verb write. And in the passive, this becomes my reports were written yesterday. Okay? So notice here, the past participle is not the same as the past simple. It's different. So this is why irregular verbs are harder to form in the passive voice because the past participle is irregular. So this is an example of an irregular verb. Base form, write. Past simple form is wrote, which you see here in the active voice. But the passive uses the past participle and it is written. It is written. So this is wrong. My reports were written yesterday. Totally wrong. And my reports were wrote yesterday. That is also wrong. So the conclusion is you must learn the past participle form of irregular verbs. You have no choice, no other way to do it. You must learn the past participle of irregular verbs. So, yes, it is very important to learn the past participles of irregular verbs. But don't worry, guys. I have a video about this. And this is the link in the description, and it is also on my channel. It's on the screen, and I recommend you to watch this video, and you can see the description here. Yes, okay guys, so this is the end. For I have prepared a separate video for practice exercise. All right, so there you go. Visit englishtutorhub.com for a downloadable materials of this lesson, and there are many other useful stuff that you might interested in. And please subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much.